Hello, everyone. Welcome to tonight's class, 24 Sketchbook Prompts to Start 2024. I am your instructor, Adrienne Hodge, and I'm so excited to see so many new folks joining us tonight. Tonight's class will be just focusing on 6 of these 24 prompts that I shared with you in the supply list, and we will be using um, a variety of materials, mostly pen and ink related materials, and the supplies were included on the supply list, but it's very flexible. So whatever you have on hand is perfectly fine. You do not have to use the exact same supplies that I am using. So that tends to be a question that I get asked the most in these classes is, what if I don't have the exact same supplies? It's totally fine. You can do these sketchbook prompts with really anything that you have on hand. And they're also very flexible prompts, so you can modify them as needed, and that was in the class description as well. And there are no rules regarding these sketchbook prompts. It's not like you need to do one every day. So it's really user-friendly here, I'm hoping, and they're just 24 prompts just to like get you started with the new year. And so we'll dive in tonight and we'll cover 6 of them together. We'll spend about 15-ish minutes on each one in an hour and a half. And then you'll be free to work on the rest of the prompts on your own. If we have any time left over at the end, I'm happy to answer questions about the rest of the prompts. And since we have so many new folks joining tonight, I wanted to share with you that I decided to start a new online draw club. So that will be on Zoom, and you can register through my link tree, which can be found in my Instagram bio at the top of my Instagram. So at Adrienne Hodge Art, and Carrie is also dropping the link to sign up for that online draw club in the chat. It'll be Saturday mornings on Zoom, just 1 hour, and I'll be providing reference images and a prompt, and we'll just draw together. And we can even apply some of those maybe to some of these prompts since they are so easily, easy to modify. And some of the things that I have planned for the next 4 Saturdays in the draw club would apply to that. So check that out if you're interested. Just a little side thing that I'm doing, not connected to Michael's, but if you enjoy this class and you're interested in drawing more with me online, then you can check that out through that link, or find Online Draw Club through my link tree. Okay, I'm going to switch to my tabletop view and we'll get started. But actually, before I do that, I should mention the other classes that we have coming up this month with Michael. So next Wednesday, we've got I can't recall the exact title, but it's getting started with a new painting skill, and it's Gouache Painting 101, I believe is the official title. And you can sign up for that where you signed up for this one. And then the following week is Making Money with Your Art with Adrienne Hodge Art, which is me. So I'm going to be sharing with you some tips and things for, marketing your art or making your art marketable, and putting your art out there if you'd like to sell it, things in regards to copyright, staying within copyright laws when selling your art, and different things that you can do to make money as an artist, because it can be a very rewarding career, but sometimes it can be a little tricky knowing where to start if you're trying to make money with the art that you're making. So that'll be the next couple of Wednesdays in January with these Michael's classes. So now I will switch to my tabletop view and discuss supplies. So don't forget to tag your work if you do these sketchbook prompts later on your own. Still, please tag your work with those hashtags, Make It With Michael's or Michael's Classes, and you can follow me on Instagram at Adrienne Hodge Art. It's there in my It's there on the screen as my name as well. And then here are some of my business cards. I'm also on Facebook, Adrian Hodge Fine Art. So you can follow me there as well if you'd like. Okay, so like I said, it's very open to you using your own supplies that you have on hand. It's totally fine if you don't have the same supplies here, but I'm primarily going to be using a lot of Faber-Castell and Tombow pen and ink materials tonight. And here's one example of one of the prompts that we're going to be working on. And I'm doing everything in this little Canson pen and ink sketchbook. And I'm using a variety of Faber-Castell pens here. All the sets were linked in the supply list, but I have a set that has some grayscale and this, let's see, what is this color? Listed as sanguine. I thought it was sepia, but it's sanguine, so we'll be using that one. Totally fine if you don't have that color or that particular set. We're going to be using these, and then just the Faber-Castell Pitt pens as well. So I've got a variety of those. Also these Tombow Fudenosuke brush tip pens. I've got the hard tip and the soft tip. I think I just have the hard tip right here in front of me, actually. But they come in a set with hard and soft. And then I've got this landscape set of Tombow dual brush pens with the landscape colors for one of the prompts that we'll be working with. And then I have some Winsor and Newton ink here, some black ink. I've also got a pipette or an eyedropper by Artist Loft that you can purchase at Michael's. And we're really just going to be using one little drop of this ink. We're not going to get too crazy with the ink, although we are going to be doing something kind of interesting. So you really don't need a palette or any of that or paintbrushes. We're just going to be making an ink blot with it. And that's the first thing we're going to do. But you are going to want a water cup to put your little pipette in when you're done, if you are using one like that. And if you don't have an eyedropper or a pipette, then you'll just have to get creative. I'll make some other suggestions for what to do with that one. I am not providing reference images tonight. We're going to be working with our own references that hopefully you can find something nearby or on your phone really quickly before each prompt. And I highlighted the prompts that we are going to be using in the document that was shared with you with the 24 prompts. And I'm just going to pull those up real quick on my iPad so that I can show you those prompts. Okay, so we have the 24 sketchbook prompts to start 2024. So we're going to be working on this draw 6 thumbnail sketches of the view outside your window. So hopefully you've got a window nearby and you can see some light in order, if it's dark outside, then you might want to find some images from, some landscape images that you can draw from, or maybe just go outside and take some pictures in the dark real quick. We are going to make an ink blot and turn it into a fractal design. That's number 4 on the list. And they all have little asterisks next to them, the ones that we're going to be focusing on tonight. So that's why we need the ink. And we don't need a reference image from that. We'll be working from whatever happens when we make this ink blot. And then we're going to be doing number 10, draw a still life item on your nightstand. That could also be on your desk or end table or whatever is nearby. So it doesn't necessarily have to be, your nightstand. So I'm just going to draw what's in front of me on my desk when we get to that one. We're going to draw the branch of a tree or a house plant. If you don't have a house plant nearby, then you can maybe go outside and take a picture of a tree real quick. I'm gonna use a picture of a tree that I took on my iPad. And then draw the shapes of an interesting shadow around your house. So I kept that one very simple when I did this one, and I just drew the shadow of my coffee mug that was on the table near me. So I'll encourage you to do something simple like that. And then number 19 is draw the negative space surrounding the shadow shape in drawing number 14, or the negative space of your ink blot fractal from drawing prompt number 4. So we'll be working from one of those other examples to do that one. And I'll walk you through all of these. So we will all be working together, and hopefully I'll answer any questions as we go along, but I'm gonna try to save questions towards the very end unless they're like really, really pressing questions. For while we're working, because we've got a lot to get through in this hour and a half. Okay, so and the list should have been provided in the supply list, and if you're having trouble finding the sketchbook prompts, then Carrie can drop the link in the chat for you. But it should be there, just linked in the supply list. Okay. So let's get started on the first one, which we're doing tonight, which is prompt number 3, draw 6 thumbnail sketches of the view outside your window. So these are the examples that I included, and I am, like I said, going to be working from some images on my phone because it's already dark here. But if you still have some daylight outside, then you can just work straight from the view that you have outside of your window. And if you don't have daylight and you don't have any images on your phone, then maybe you can just do some thumbnail sketches of around your room right now. Okay, so thumbnail sketches are little boxes that we can draw in our sketchbook to help us find an interesting composition, or to sort of plan and prepare for another drawing. Excuse me. Or let's say you're creating a painting and you want to, decide on your composition for the painting. You can do some little thumbnail sketches. We've done thumbnail sketches in a number of other classes before, and I'm just going to walk you through doing these thumbnail sketches now. So I'm going to grab a small nib pen. So whatever pen you have that is pretty small will work great. And I am just going to set a timer here for 10 minutes so that we can be sure not to go over time on these. Actually, Carrie, would you mind setting a timer for me?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much. Okay, so that way I don't have to toggle away too much here on my iPad. All right, so you can use you can trace boxes for thumbnail sketches. If you have a hard time drawing straight lines, you could maybe grab some different shapes that you have nearby, like some business cards or Post-its or things like that. I'm going to bring that up a little later in the class as well. And I got that trick from a friend of mine who's an art teacher in Austin, Jenny Granberry. She's also on YouTube and has a number of awesome YouTube videos, but she likes to use business cards or Post-its to sketch little boxes in her sketchbook so that it makes it a little easier to make straight lines. But I am just going to draw some boxes. So I want all of mine to fit within view on the page. So I'm going to do some landscape rectangles. I'm going to do some portrait rectangles. And I'm not worried about them being perfect. So I don't mind if they're a little wonky here. Straightening my camera though. And maybe I'll make one like a little longer and skinnier, so it feels a little more panoramic. And I am so sorry. I thought I had my devices on Do Not Disturb, but for some reason, all these messages are coming through to me right now. Give me just one moment, y'all. Okay. So we've got 6 little boxes here. And yeah, I'm trying to encourage you to embrace wonkiness by letting mine be a little wonky. And then we are just going to go to town just sketching what we see outside our window. So I had a class on urban sketching a while back, which Carrie can drop the link in the chat to that one, and it talked about how to kind of edit out the perspective that you see around you. So if you're really overwhelmed by like the roof of a house or any sort of linear perspective, that class can be really helpful. But my main trick that I discussed in that is really to just embrace the wonkiness again, and also to kind of hover over the page and let your lines be a little broken, or maybe just draw like the limited version, the edited version of the shapes that you're seeing outside. So if I'm seeing like 2 rooftops and a couple of windows, instead of having them facing away from me in linear perspective, I can have them facing towards me. And then that just makes it, a couple of triangles and some rectangles. And then the other thing that I'm doing is I'm kind of hovering over the page so that my lines will be a little broken here as I add these little trees. An easy way to limit and edit a tree is to just think about the letter Y. So branches that come off of a tree tend to all happen in the shape of the letter Y. And you can do that in a way that sort of limits the detail that you're seeing there. So that's how I'm drawing that tree that I'm seeing. And then for like a mass of trees nearby, I like to do this little like heart rate monitor thing to get those other trees in there, and maybe a little scribble sketch inside of them. But thumbnail sketches can be as detailed as you want them to be, or they can be nice and minimal. So in all of these sketches, and as you're sketching your view outside of your window, try to limit it to, just the basic shapes that you're seeing, and look at like what shapes are jumping out at you the most, and see how you can simplify those shapes. But really, all of these sketchbook prompts are just about getting you practicing and getting you started. I know the hardest thing to do when it comes to making art is just getting started and getting past that sorry, getting past that, voice in your head that is, maybe negative or getting in the way of you keeping that sketchbook practice, like thinking that what you're doing is not going to be good enough, all the procrastinating thoughts that get in the way. And so I was hoping to just give you some prompts that would get us started. Sorry, I'm having to send a text message real quick asking my family thread to please stop texting me. I thought my phone was in Do Not Disturb, and I don't have the time to go into my settings. So it was a little faster to just ask them to take the conversation to a different thread. Okay, so I'm just limiting all the views that I saved here. you know, letting my lines be a little broken. And I don't know about y'all, but these little sketches like this can be really satisfying for me. You know, just filling in a little box like this makes me feel like I've done something, and maybe I really haven't done that much, but it still gives me that sense of accomplishment. So hopefully you feel the same way. And I literally just took these photos right before it got dark outside while the class was about to start. And I have the most boring view outside of my window, or else I would share these images with you. It is an alley, it is a carport, it's a fence line, and the top of the house next to me. So I'm willing to bet you might have some more interesting views outside of your window. And I'm just looking at the main shape. So I've got like the grass, a little bit of a tree, and I'm editing out quite a bit. And I'm mostly just looking at like a shape that I see in the patch of grass right there. And I'm like, you know, that's enough for one. And maybe later this might inspire you to do a more developed detailed drawing of one of these things. You know, we can find inspiration in the most surprising places sometimes. Maybe you're like, hey, that carport suddenly is really inspiring to me now that I sketched it in this limited way. Now I kind of want to do a more detailed version of it. And I'm going to draw one of these tree branches in just a moment here. So everyday things around us can be a great way to just like get that muscle movement going each day. You know, get your practice in. Just doing a skill for 20 minutes a day is a great way to, you know, make it a habit. And sometimes knowing what to draw is the hard part, and waiting for inspiration can keep you waiting a long time. So I say, why not just draw the things that are right around us? All right. I just realized I've got 5 here instead of 6. Let's see, maybe I'll do a different view of the same one. Like I still have my little funny Halloween decorations out here in the yard. They're little fake witches' feet sticking up out of the ground. I'm gonna draw my little witch feet. All right. Carrie, how are we doing on that 10-minute timer?
It just went off.
Oh, okay, thank you. All right, I think that's good. I got 5 instead of 6, but that's a nice little sketchbook page. So I'm going to call that done since we're at that 10-minute timer there. And now that my family thread has calmed down, I'm go ahead and set the next timer for myself here. All right, so the next sketchbook prompt that we're going to do is, let's see, I got to look again. I can't remember what the next one was. It is, oh, the good one. Well, they're all good, but I love this one. Make an ink blot into a fractal design. And I totally forgot we needed to make our ink blot first and then let it dry while we were working on that one. But we'll go ahead and make our ink blot and then we'll move on to the next one. And then when this is dry, we'll come back. So if you're working on these later on your own, if you're just kind of watching and you're not doing these right along with us at the moment, then this is something you might just, you know, take your time doing. But since if you're doing this right now with me, then let's go ahead and tear a page out of our sketchbook. I'd love to keep them in the sketchbook, but so that we can let this dry and then come back to it. So let me just show you my completed example here. So we're going to make an ink blot on this page, and it's going to be wet and it's going to dry really quickly, but we're still going to need about 10 minutes to wait for it to dry. So we'll make our ink blot, we'll set it aside, we'll do the other prompts, one of the other prompts, and then we'll come back to it when it's dry in about 10 or 15 minutes. Okay, so I've got my little bottle of ink. And I got my little dropper, and a little bit is going to go a long way here. So we really do not need much. So, and if you do not have liquid ink to do this, then you can take a Sharpie or a pen and you can just scribble with it. That's one way to get sort of an ink blot to happen. But this is really the best way to make an ink blot. So I'm going to take the pipette and I'm just going to squeeze it a tiny bit. And I had about that much come up when I squeezed it. I'm going to pour some of that back in there because we really don't need very much ink. And since it's, you know, going to take some time to dry, the more ink that we use, the longer it's going to take to dry. So I'm just putting the lid back on my ink and setting it aside. Yeah, I see. Thank you, Sam. You can use thinned paint. Honestly, you can use whatever you want to get a big splotch on your paper. The idea is that something random is going to happen, and then we are going to make a fractal design out of it. So you can scribble with a pen, you can splash some paint on this, you know, whatever you have. Just get a random mark on the page, okay? So I am just gonna squirt some ink, and then I'm gonna take the side of the dropper and I'm gonna do something like that. I want to get it to like be kind of bulbous in some way. Okay, something like that. And then just so that I don't ruin my pipette, I'm just gonna squeeze it out into my water cup a few times and just get all that extra ink out of there. And then I'm just gonna leave it in the water cup. It may still stain the pipette a little bit, but it won't stain it too bad if you squeeze it a few times inside of a water cup. So like this was the one I used last night, and I did the same thing, and it did leave a bit of some ink stained inside of there, but it's totally fine. And I can see it's still shiny and wet. So I'm just going to set it aside. Otherwise, we're going to smear it all around as we try to draw on the page. So I'm just going to set that one aside. And then we'll move on to one of these other prompts and we'll come back to it. And if you're working at your own pace on these later, then you can just have a cup of coffee or stare at your design while you're waiting for it to dry. You know, if you've got lots of time, you're watching this later on YouTube, pause the video, wait for it to dry, look at it, study it, all that fun stuff. And then, you know, we'll do the fractal design in just a bit when mine is dry. All right, so the next one is on our list of the asterisks is to draw a still life of the items on your nightstand or on the desk right in front of us. And this was the one, let me go to my previous example where I used those grayscale pens and the sanguine pen. So I used this one, I used this light gray, a little bit darker gray, and then it looks like I used some black. So I'll get my black brush tip, and these are all brush tip pens. So if you have this particular set, then you'll use these. If you don't, then I want you to grab a highlighter. If you happen to have a highlighter nearby, that would work really great instead of this light gray. So like a yellow highlighter, a pink highlighter, green highlighter, something nice and light and transparent like this light gray here. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to create kind of a tone with our light gray highlighter. And this is just a fun trick that will really elevate a sketchbook page. Because like I said, I'm just taking all these very simple nearby things and then just giving you some prompts that will elevate, you know, these everyday items and make them create a interesting little composition in your sketchbook so you can have that little satisfied feeling that comes from a satisfying sketchbook page. And if you want more prompts like this, I've got that online draw club that I mentioned at the beginning of the class that you can join me for by following the link in my link tree or on my Instagram. Okay, so I'm taking that light gray and I'm just going to start doing some diagonal hatching lines. So if you've got your highlighter or yeah, highlighter would work best. Then you're just doing the same thing with that. And we're going to fill up like a whole little block on the page. Kind of create a big swatch with our light gray or your highlighter. And then I'm going to go back over it in the other direction and create some cross hatching with some alternating diagonal lines. I'm going to turn my page a little bit so I can do it without bumping my camera. And so what this is doing is it's just kind of creating a tone on the page, and it's creating just like an interesting design or background for us to build on. It's creating some interesting marks. You'd be surprised with what just creating interest in a composition with, something unexpected can do for any drawing that might otherwise feel boring. But I'm one of those people that doesn't find a whole lot of things boring, so maybe that's a good thing. All right, so I've got my ink bottle right in front of me. I've got this little lamp on my desk. I've got my eraser. And then I've got this pile of pens that I'm working with, and I feel like that's enough. So that's what I'm gonna draw. I'm gonna take my black brush tip pen now, and I'm just gonna start sketching my lamp, and I'm gonna use that same method that I was doing with the thumbnail sketches where I'm kind of letting my line be broken and implied. I'm kind of hovering over the page. I'm also going to embrace wonkiness here and try to simplify all of the objects and the shapes. Like on the base of this lamp, did I just perfectly nail the eclipse, what am I trying to say? The elliptical shape of the base of that lamp? Maybe not, but it's close enough. So I'm gonna leave it kind of wonky. But I will give it 3 dimensions by adding another thing down here at the bottom. And this is where adding that extra sanguine color is going to really come in handy, because if I feel like my drawing is lacking in some way, adding that extra color is another way to kind of elevate it. I maybe could have gone a little higher with my gray background, but that's okay. This is kind of going outside of the background. Maybe that will make it a little more interesting, or I can just extend my gray up a little bit right here. I think I'll just do that. And then I'm just going to kind of follow the contours on the side and add some hatching and cross hatching here. This is a great exercise to do before bed too. I think that's why I put the nightstand in there, because I feel like just taking a minute to sketch the items on your nightstand before bed is a good use of your last 10 minutes before bed. And when I just said 10 minutes, it reminded me I never actually set my timer here. I'm gonna go ahead and set it for 5 minutes. I feel like 5 more minutes on this one will be good. All right, and then next to my little lamp, I've got my little ink bottle. And there is some linear perspective involved in this ink bottle. If you've got linear perspective involved in any of your items, and you're not an expert at linear perspective, definitely had a number of classes on linear perspective in the last 2.5 years in this class, but when you're drawing with a pen only, I mean, I had some wonkiness just happen there. I feel like embrace wonkiness should be the theme of tonight's class and all of these sketchbook prompts. Do a little scribble here instead of writing out Winsor and Newton ink. And there's that cute little spider. All right. Gonna add the shadows that I'm seeing here to make it a little more interesting as well. Totally just invented those shadows because I can't see any shadows and they're going the opposite direction. The shadows are like right underneath them, I guess. I get my eraser in here too. I'm going to use a different one of these grays with the shadows. And already just using those different values of gray brush pens, I feel like just does something really fun here for this drawing. And maybe I want to add some of that to some other places on the drawing as well. And yeah, if you don't have these grayscale pens, maybe you'll be inspired to go buy some at Michael's now because they are just super fun. And I love this set, how it comes with this sanguine color. I feel like just adding this little pop of color here. So maybe if you have a red pen nearby, that could be something fun that you could add. I'm just kind of highlighting these items with this sanguine color. I'm gonna scribble on it, I think. Do a little scribble. Give it some texture in that way. Can't wait to see some examples of what y'all are doing with some of these prompts with your own views around your desk. All right, I think that's pretty good. And I did not quite use up that 5 minutes. I'm gonna cancel that timer. Okay, so our ink blot should be dry now. So I'm gonna set this aside or just grab my ink blot. Okay, so this one is so fun. I had so much fun doing this. Um, so I just realized for the thumbnail sketches, I was supposed to use my Tombow Fudenosuke pen, and I didn't use it. Maybe I'll use it for this one. Although, really, you can use whatever you want. I don't have to use the exact same supplies that I used for my examples before. Okay, so I'm going to show you my other fractal design to illustrate how I did this. Okay, so if you're familiar with tessellations, that's kind of what I'm doing here to create like a fractal. It could also, be considered a tessellation. MC Escher did a lot of tessellations, and if you're unfamiliar with that, you can just Google MC Escher tessellations. So it's a design that repeats the same shape over and over again. So that's basically what we're doing here, but my shapes are not identical to the ink blot shape. So I don't want you to, like belabor it so much that get frustrated with it. Like I want you to just kind of get close enough. So I'm looking for like, these big shapes that are sticking out to me, and maybe some of like the scribbles that happened when we moved the little pipette around, or however you made your random mark on the page. Some random things probably happened, like I got all these little random little textury moments that happened around here, but the main shape that I have is this. So I'm just going to start, but I just don't want you to worry about yours being perfect in some way, because mine is definitely not going to be perfect, and it wasn't perfect before. It just looks nice when we get it to a more completed state, or more developed. I really like the word developed. So I'm going to set a timer for 10 minutes again, and then we'll move on, but maybe we'll come back to this one towards the end if I don't get as far as I want to. Okay, so there's this little like triangle shape pointing up on mine, and then it kind of goes in. So it's kind of silly for me to sit here and describe everything that I'm doing to mine, much like some of these other prompts like I've been doing so far, because I know, especially with this one, yours is going to be so different than mine, but try to just get it in the ballpark of the shape that you're seeing. And I'm not, measuring anything in any way. I'm just kind of going a little bit above, and I'm letting them overlap. So each time I repeat the shape, I'm really only repeating a part of the shape. And then I'll go over here and go ahead and repeat that again. But this time I'm going to start, like I'm going to scooch it over a little bit each time. And when I did this before, I tried to keep in mind that, all of us are going to have different drawing levels and abilities. And so I really let each one be imperfect. So please do not worry if it's not like identical. I feel like when you get a lot of them on the page, even if some of the bigger shapes are mostly similar as a whole, that's kind of what we're going for with a lot of these prompts today, that like as a whole, the sketchbook page turns out to be fairly satisfying and nice. But if we look at it, up close, there might be some issues, but we're not worried about that. Okay, and then I'm definitely seeing some shapes in mine. Like I see a cat head. I don't know what this triangle would be, but maybe like a horn. Kind of the whole thing reminds me of a seahorse. So anyway, you're probably seeing some interesting Rorschach test worthy things in yours as well. The other thing I forgot to say whenever we were making the ink blot was the bigger they are, the faster this will go. So if your ink blot or your random mark is really small on your page, it will definitely take you a little longer to fill up the page. So I'm probably not going to fill up the page with this one because my timer is ticking away over here. I got 7 minutes left and I want to add some embellishments to these as well. So I think last night I made mine a little bigger. And so it didn't take that many repetitions of it to fill up the page. But I was also trying to make an ink blot tonight that would dry really fast. So it didn't turn out as big. The perils of online teaching. Even with this hour and a half we have now, it still just goes by so fast. Okay. Oh, and then I've got a few little moments where there's like a gap in between. So I want to make sure to put those little details in there. I feel like that makes such a difference. So like I've got a little flying saucer shaped gap in the center of mine, or kind of a third of the way down. Can't quite see it in that one, but I'm gonna put that in these. All right, I'm gonna stop there with the repeating so I can get some cool texture inside of them. So this might be fun to do with the grayscale pens again. I just love these grayscale pens. So I'm going to fill in, and I love filling things in with a diagonal hatching line. So I'm going to do that again. And on the other example, I filled in the entire thing with a diagonal hatching line that was visible, but this one I'm like letting them kind of overlap. I feel like that looks nice both ways. And then I think I went back over it and did some cross hatching. I was also using a really small nib pen for that other one, but it was definitely time consuming. And I could go back and show you that other example if you'd like in just a moment, or I definitely will. And you could even just go ahead and fill all of these in solid so that it feels like a wallpaper, you know, where the whole thing just really repeats. But I just felt like that would take too much time to do, and that this might be a little more interesting. And also I just kind of liked the way they looked with some interesting textures inside. Some other ideas that I had for filling these in would be to fill them in with your favorite doodle. You know, if you really like doodling polka dots, or, you know, triangles, or whatever your favorite doodle is, a brick pattern, that could be fun. Anything like that, any sort of pattern that repeats would be nice for filling these in. Let's see. But yeah, let me do what I did before, which was the cross hatching. So I'm gonna do the diagonal lines and let them be visible. Leave some space in between, and then if I have any imperfect moments, then I can go back and do some cross hatching over it, and that'll kind of camouflage any of the, you know, mistakes that I might make. So see, some of my hatching is getting a little messy there, or maybe my lines are not perfectly straight and diagonal. I find this to be very meditative too. It's a great way to meditate, to just make an unintentional mark, repeat it, and then doodle inside of it. I definitely got carried away with this one last night and worked on it for much longer than 20 minutes. The idea behind most of these was that they would take you 20 minutes, but this one is one I feel like you could spend a whole night in front of the TV doing. So I'm just going back over that hatching in a different direction to make it cross hatching. I would say my default way of filling in a large space is always diagonal cross hatching. Okay, and see, even going this way, I still see some of my imperfect lines, but if I just keep going over it with a different direction of diagonal hatching lines, it starts to really feel nice and full and interesting to me, and it also starts to blend. So this is a great way to practice blending with cross hatching too, is to just fill in some random shapes with some cross hatching. That's something that people really struggle with, trying to figure out how to blend these pen and ink shading techniques. So this is a good way to practice that if you struggle with it. As you can see how I'm starting to get it to feel blended in those areas where I'm repeating it over and over again and going back over it. Okay, and then how much time do I have left here? 30 seconds. The other one I did on the other one was, the other example was I did some stippling and I thought that looked really nice, but it's definitely time consuming. So I'm probably not going to get to finish, but even just stippling some of these interesting corners that are sticking up, maybe all the way around. If you don't get too impatient with the stippling process, I know that one takes a lot more patience to execute. But the other thing I wanted to definitely add in was some of this interesting texture. So, some of these little like scribbly moments that happened, I'm going to take my extra small nib and try to imitate some of those things, because repeating that sort of texture like makes it, just feel even more intentional, like even those little swirly moments that happened. Yeah. Okay. So that's our fractal design from an ink blot. I could just work on that for another hour. Like I said, I just find that so fun. Okay, the next one on our list is to draw the branch of a tree or a house plant. So let me go to my previous example. This was the one I used the Tombow landscape markers for. Okay, so that was my previous example, and I'm going to do a similar thing with an image that I have of a tree branch. I could use my house plant, but I don't have any right in front of me and I forgot to grab one. So I've got these 3 different greens, and I've got what other colors we have in this set? Got this brown color. I've got a blue. Not going to really use the blue. I will use the black, and maybe I will sneak in this gray color again. I feel like that light gray just really pulls things together so nicely. Okay, so we're going to start from light to dark here. We're going to go from light to dark on this tree branch, and that's going to be the way that we're going to kind of elevate it, and we're going to simplify and elevate, and also embrace wonkiness in all of these. So I'm starting with this light green. It might be kind of hard to see it on the page. And so it'll come into view a little more when I add these other colors, I bet. I'm just going to bounce around and add this light green in all the places where I'm seeing light green on the leaves of my branch. So on your house plant, look for those moments where the light green is really prominent, the lightest areas of green, and maybe exaggerate some of the shapes a little bit or add some extra ones if you're not seeing too much light green. Then we'll go one shade darker. And if you need to like make a little swatch off to the side of these greens to see, you know, which ones are light and dark, I honestly forget. So I'm doing this for myself just as much as for you. So this will help us see that light green shows up really transparent on the Zoom screen. Let me not forget to set my timer again. I'm going to set it for 7 minutes because we've got 2 more after this and I'm worried about running out of time now. Okay, and then I've got my brown and my black. And then sneaking in this transparent gray again, if it's just really pulls the drawing together. Okay, so I'm going from light to dark. So I'll go with my little bit darker green now and start to draw some of the leaf shapes that I'm seeing on top of the lighter green leaves. And I'll leave some of them open to fill in. I see somebody's asking, could I state which colors they are in the Tombow set? Sure, I can do that. They are not listed as colors, they're listed with numbers. So it's on the back of the set there. It has 131, 126, 192. They're all there on the back of the set. And I'm just using the 131, the 126, the 192, the N49, the N25, and then I'm using that transparent gray brush pen. It's the warm gray 3272 of the Faber-Castell set that I had as well. Okay, so now I'm using that 126 green. But you know, your house plant might be a little bit different, or you might have some different colors, and for your branch that you're looking at, really just trying to give us a method for, you know, getting a nice simplified plant or tree branch drawing here. So start with your lighter color, go in with the darker color, and then I'm just going to fill in half of these leaves. And this is maybe not exactly how I see the leaves on the tree, but it's just going to make it a little more interesting by adding this other dimensional color. So this is the 192. And maybe I'll add some on their own that are like this. And I'm just kind of scribbling in. And then once I add the branches, I can go back and, you know, add in whatever I feel like is necessary. Okay, so yeah, this branch is kind of turning into like a tree branch inspired by the tree branch I'm looking at. It's not necessarily exactly like I'm seeing the tree branch. So I'm using that transparent gray, and I'm really just trying to make my tree branch go in a way that connects to these leaves, or where it passes near the leaves. and I'm looking at the tree branch in my photo for inspiration, but I'm mostly sketching a little bit based on my imagination of a tree here. So I got the light gray, and then I'm going to go back on top of that with this lighter brown, which is the N49. And I'm not going to cover up all of the gray. I'm going to kind of do that implied line thing and like add some dimension onto that light gray. So you're probably feeling that there's like a theme to all this stuff that I'm doing. I'm starting with lighter colors. I'm building on it with darker colors. I'm really letting these source images and things that I'm looking at be my inspiration for, you know, my own creativity and kind of designing something that's more based on the things that I'm looking at versus trying to do something hyper realistic. And I think doing that in a sketchbook practice really lets you off the hook a little bit and makes it, you know, like all these parameters that we tend to put on ourselves for like, you know, what we should do when we draw on our sketchbook sometimes, you know, just lead to us procrastinating and not doing anything at all. So the other thing I'm doing here is I'm kind of making a little curved cylinder shape along the branches and giving them like 3 dimensions like this. So I'm kind of doing a little curved line that follows the contours of a cylinder, which is something I do a lot in all of these classes, talking about contour lines. Okay, that's looking pretty good. Let's see, what else do I want to add? I want to add some more green to like tie it together. So yeah, now I'll go back in and like add on directly to the branches some leaf shapes. And then also I want to have some that are just like loose and free and floating around by themselves. And then I might even do some like little stippling dots to make it feel like the wind is blowing them. You feel free to add any other embellishments to these leaves that you're feeling inspired by. What you're looking at to add, like any interesting shapes, like maybe you have those little curly Q twigs happening and you could add something like that. All right. 11 seconds left. Good. I'm going to stop that timer before it makes the obnoxious sound. Okay, and so these last 2 prompts are looking at shadows and negative space. And let me go to my previous examples here. Okay, so I'm going to show you the example that I started doing before. I had a new idea. I was looking at like a really big shadow on the wall, and it was like, oh my goodness, it's going to take me an hour to fill in this shadow with this hatching and cross hatching, you know, thing that I've been doing here. And so I thought, let me look for a really simple shape. And the simple shape that I found was just the shadow that was being created by my coffee mug on the table, just this, you know, very the handle of the coffee mug. So I'm going to do the same sort of thing tonight. I'm going to pull my coffee mug close to me and see if I can get it to make a similar shadow across my table. Let's see, it's kind of creating a different sort of shadow, but still an interesting one. And we're going to make a little frame for it, like a thumbnail in our sketchbook. So I'm going to use a Post-it this time. I was actually using the It's not nearby me on my desk, but it's a watercolor supply that we've used, and from Michaels, it's the Viviva color sheets. That's what I used, but a bookmark would also make a long, skinny rectangle like that too, if you have a bookmark nearby. But I think I'm just going to use my Post-its since those are right here. And so we'll go ahead and do two of them, whatever you do, like a bookmark or a Post-it or however you want to frame it on your page. And I feel like crediting my art teacher friend Jenny Granberry again, because I love that idea of using a business card or a Post-it to frame, you know, a little interesting frame in your sketchbook. And I'm going to put it right there in the center of the sketchbook page. And that way I get something that feels like I, you know, measured and made margins and everything. And I'm going to leave it even a little open here. And I'll do another one on the next page so I can try to get it in the exact same spot. And I'm going to do a little trick here so that it'll make it easier for us to do the next one. So do these back to back in your sketchbook. You know, one page right on top of the other. And we're going to start with the one that's behind so that we can lay this one on top. I don't know if it's going to be in the exact same spot, but yeah, it's pretty good. Try to overlap them where they're like around in the same spot, and then we can maybe trace through the page if you get them lined up pretty good like that. But if you don't, then no big deal. Okay, so simplifying the shape again here. So there's kind of a few different lights that are creating multiple shadows, but I'm just going to simplify it and make it like that. So that's what we're working with. So that's my shadow. So now I'm going to get to work, and I'm using that Tombow brush tip pen. Again, here you can use any of these pens that we have out today. You could even just use a Sharpie if that's what you have. And actually, I'm going to use the brush pen so I can fill it in nice and quickly and solid. Where did that black brush pen go? If I use the side of the brush pen, I can really fill in a lot really quickly. So I'm getting it kind of parallel to the paper. But yeah, if you're working on your own, watching later on YouTube, then definitely don't rush through these. I'm just trying to get all 6 of these. In hindsight, maybe I should have said only 4 or 5. I wasn't thinking about the first 15 minutes of the class. I was thinking, oh, 15 minutes each and an hour and a half. We'll do 6. So with a brush tip pen, with a brush pen, you really want to be careful to only put the full pressure on the brush pen when you've got it on the side of the pen like this. If you're using the tip of the pen, you want to be really careful not to put the full pressure on it. Otherwise, you're going to lose the nice pointy tip on the brush tip. So I've got it really parallel to the paper. And we had a class almost, I feel like it was 2 years ago now. I've been doing this for coming up on 3 years in July. So 2.5 years, a little over 2.5 years now. And yeah, I feel like it was about 2 years ago in January even of 2021, we had a class on negative space using Artist Loft illustration pens and the brush tip pens, and we measured out margins. We did a very similar little drawing like this using an image that I provided of a plant, the shadow of a plant against a wall. And Carrie can drop the link to that YouTube video in the chat, or you can search negative space artist loft, and that should come up in your search. And that can, help, because I really break down drawing negative space in that one with all the the nooks and crannies in the negative space of that plant drawing that I provided. But we're hopefully using a really simple shadow and shape here today. So when we move on to the negative space, hopefully it's not going to be too confusing. But I'm going to go ahead and write underneath here, shadow of coffee mug. And then the date. I think it's fun to have the little label. We could have probably done that to all of these drawings, but for some reason that one just felt like it needed a little label. Okay, and then I'll overlap my square, on top of it, and I can see it through the page. I know it's probably not showing up on the Zoom, but I can see it right there. Maybe should have used a different pen to outline it than the brush tip pen. I was just talking about how you got to be careful with the tip of these. I'm going to switch to my other one. All right, so now instead of filling in the shadow, we're going to fill in the negative space around the shadow. And this might take a little longer. I'm going to turn my sketchbook a little to the side so that I can really get a good angle without bumping my camera. And I'm just going to start going again with the brush pen on its side. Just doing like one stripe at a time so that they overlap. And get us to a solid black. And I would put this exercise right up there with the ink blot fractal on the meditative scale. This is just, I could do this all night too. And all of these prompts, I tried to give you things that I felt like you could do these prompts while sitting in front of the TV, or lying in bed before bed as just a way to kind of relax, or maybe even to start your day, like first thing in the morning with your coffee mug or whatever your morning beverage of choice is. I think one of the prompts was even draw your favorite morning beverage. I know when we're trying to start those New Year's good habits and set our intentions for the year, for me this year, it was really to like slow down and not feel guilty about resting. That's my New Year's intention. I like the word intention instead of resolution. So all of these prompts that I gave you on this list, I feel like really help with that, because they're all about taking the time to notice things that are around us, seeing them in a new way, simplifying, and elevating them, right? And I think that's a great way to slow down and rest right where we are. All right. So I filled in my negative space. How fun is that? I got the negative space and then the shadow space. So this is negative space of shadow of coffee mug. All right. Let's see. We got 14 minutes left. I was rushed. I was worried we were going to run out of time, and then I rushed to the end, and we have 14 minutes left. But that's good because now I would like to see, well, I want to see some of your drawings. And then I'd also love to answer any questions that you might have about some of these other prompts. And maybe we could even do one more together if it seems like we've got time. But first, if you'd like to hold up one of your favorite sketches or even more than one. All right, there's Barbara's fractal design. I love it. I love the scribbles and all the different texture that you created with the way that you filled those in. Let's see, that's Kathleen's still life of the desk area. I love it. It's a beautiful lamp with a leaf design on it. Ooh, look at these. Those are really fun. Yeah, I love those colors that you used. You got two different perspectives of the same little table and lamp. All right, we've got Jade there. Oh, that's really nice how it's kind of going off the page. That's an interesting composition there with that one. I like those colors that you used there as well. Ooh, those are nice colors. Jenny, I love that blue in the background. Yeah, that cross hatching with that lighter color really just gives it a little something extra, and then it showed through on your kind of negative space of the design on the vase. It's really nice. Hi, Sarah. How's it going? All right. That's a really nice still life there. We all have very similar lamps. I like it. Ooh, look at that one. Oh, I love that. The little FW ink bottle there and the brush pen or the brush, but the ink brush. And then I can't tell what that is next to the item, but I love the shadows on all of those. That's really nice. Love the purple. Oh, it's your kneaded eraser. Cool. Oh, look at that. Oh, I love it. Whose is this? Tess. I love when folks take these, like I was hoping y'all would modify them and make them your own in some way. This is really fun. Love to see it. Thank you. And there's a nice tree branch from April. I love the way you added that texture with the scribbling. That's really nice. Yeah, I'm seeing some cool creative problem solving happening in all of these. This is Gloria. That's a really, wow, that really reminds me of like an octopus or a squid or something. It's a cool shape that happened. Point to your original random mark. Oh, you paint, okay, you kind of filled it in with the paint and then you outlined it. Oh, yeah, I see. It's paint blot. All right, cool. I love this nonverbal communication we're doing here. Since you can't talk on the Zoom. Oh, that's really fun. That's a cool design. I like it. I like that cross hatching that's happening in there. Yeah, and the leaves are kind of floating. Yeah, that's a good modification of that prompt. Oh, that one is fun. It looks like another paint blot. Yeah. Oh, and you turned it into some creatures. I'm seeing like some really interesting creatures. Wow, you could like create a children's book inspired by those paint block creatures. Oh, look at that. That is so fun. Oh, I love all those transparent layers. Really nice. Oh, thank you all for sharing these. These are so fun. Oh, that's a gorgeous tree branch. I really like it. I love those colors. And then you got your shadow of the coffee mug in there too. Oh, that one's fun. Oh my gosh, look at both of those. They're so great. One. Oh, I love how you turned it almost into like mermaid scales or a spider web there on that one. Yes, and then your still life is gorgeous. Oh, I love it so much. Please share these with me online. If you share them online, tag me so that I can share them on my Instagram. That one was really great one. Sharon's tree branch here. I love it. Yeah, starting with those lighter colors and building on the darker colors really just is a great way to draw a tree branch. All right. Oh, I see someone's asking, how can you tag me? So if you post it on Instagram, you can just do the little at symbol and then type in my handle, Adrienne Hodge Art, and it should automatically tag me on Instagram. You can also share it with me on Instagram and or just post it and then on your Instagram story, if you tag me in there, it'll automatically share it with me and then I can share it. All right, Michelle is asking, so when we use Tombow, you don't worry about using the blend marker to blend colors. Oh my gosh, Michelle, thank you for bringing that up. I totally had the blender here on my desk and I meant to blend some of those and I did with the original example that I did. And then I just totally forgot about blending because I wanted to move on. But yeah, you can use the blender to blend those colors together. And let me switch to my tabletop real quick again, and I'll blend some of those in the tree branch. Such a good question. So yeah, that was the other reason for layering the colors on top of each other. So if the way that you layered them was kind of leaving something to be desired, you can go back in with the blender and give them a blend so they kind of blur together. But sometimes, and then you can even use the like extra that's on the blender to add some little like more transparent leaves bouncing around. Sometimes I like the way things look before blending. It's easy to get carried away with that blender and like over blend, but it is nice to blend on the tree branches themselves. And as I'm doing that, I'm realizing that's how I got it to look light gray. I was looking at my Tombow colors and I was like, how did I get the light gray to happen? And I was like, oh, because I blended the branches. And so when I blended that brown, it kind of dragged it around and made it look like a light gray. I'm so glad you asked that because, yeah, I pulled in that light gray Faber-Castell pen, but in the back of my mind, I was like, I know I didn't use this before. I used the blender. Thank you for that question. This is why I love questions because stuff like that. Thank you, Sue. Said enjoyed the negative space moment of Zen coloring. Yes, that was really a moment of Zen. Okay, so Adeline's asking, when do I have another class like this one? Well, next week's class will be using gouache, and it will be very similar to this one. It will be very meditative. We're going to be doing some uh, brushstroke practice and value scale practice using gouache. And if you've never used gouache before, it's gouache 101. So it'll be everything you need to know to get comfortable starting to paint with gouache. And it will be very easy and straightforward and meditative like this. And then I also have that online draw club that I just posted on my website that I would love for some of y'all to join me for on Saturdays. And I'll keep doing it on Saturday mornings if I get enough people signing up for that. And you can find that through my link tree that Carrie just dropped in the chat, or you can find it in the bio of my Instagram. Let's see if we have any other questions. If I scroll up here, lots of lovely comments. Thank y'all. Somebody's asking, how do I make the leaf rubbing? That's a good question. We've got 4 minutes here, and I happen to have a leaf nearby. Keep this leaf from the fall leaves class. It's just still hanging around my desk. It's like a permanent staple on my desk. It's such a good handy thing to have for like, how do you do a leaf rubbing? And I got it right here. Okay, so you're definitely gonna want like something you can rub on top of, like, I tried to keep the supply list for this class, things that you could, you know, something I could like keep the supply list, put on the supply list and keep it somewhat concise. But you could use a crayon, you could use oil pastel, you could use anything that you can turn on its side. And man, I'm gonna crush this leaf. I'm gonna just go ahead and crush it and just use a part of it here. And let's see, you could use graphite stick as well, would work. And I know I have a graphite stick nearby, so I'm gonna grab it. At least I thought I did. Okay, so yeah, this was not one that was in tonight's class, but it's on the prompts in the sketchbook prompts. So you're gonna put it underneath the paper, and you maybe did this in elementary school, where you make a rubbing of a leaf. I'm just gonna go on top of it with something I can rub on top of it. So a side of a crayon would work. And when you do that, you're going to end up with kind of an imprint of the image on the page on top. And so let's see, what was the rest of that prompt? I can't even recall now. The prompts again real quick. I know it was do something with a leaf rubbing. Make a rubbing of a leaf and fill a page with a design based on the rubbing. Okay, so one way you could do that would be to do kind of the fractal thing again, where now we draw, the shape of the leaf that I'm seeing. We could create a design like that. You could fill it in kind of like we did with the fractal, or you could just keep moving the leaf around underneath the paper and just rubbing on top of it again. And I would definitely recommend using a fresh leaf, something that's going to look like a leaf. I just kind of tore off the side of this dried leaf. So it'll be a little more obvious what we're rubbing on top of if you get a really nice, leaf-shaped leaf. A leaf-shaped leaf. You'll know what I'm talking about. Okay, but I think we get the idea. I wish I had a better leaf on hand here to use, but you're just going to make a rubbing on top of it and then create a design. It's really open to your interpretation of how you want to interpret all of these prompts. All right, we are at the hour now. Thank y'all for those questions. I really enjoyed tonight's class. This was so much fun, and I hope all of you who are just joining us tonight will come again next week for the next class on gouache painting 101. And we've also got some fun classes in February, like some Valentine's theme stuff and a lot of painting classes coming up in February, but I'll talk about those next week. Don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but this was really a lovely class and I really enjoyed it. And thank you all who shared your work, and please tag me on Instagram so I can see it again. All right. Thank you and good night.